Welcome to the DTP podcast. I'm Stuart and today I'm joined by DTP Director Sarah Jackson. We're going to be chatting about board appraisals, why they are needed and what they involve. Hello Sarah and welcome.
Hi Stuart, thanks for having me on this podcast.
And thanks for joining us. So let's kick off with some really basic questions. What do we mean by board appraisals and why are they needed?
So board appraisals, I guess, are a process to review the performance of the chair and the other non-executive directors of the organisation. So if you think in a similar way to the process that's undertaken as part of any normal workplace employee performance appraisal. In terms of why they're needed, undertaking appraisals for board members is a fundamental element of a strong governance structure. It involves reviewing individual and collective performance, as well as identifying any training or development needs. And of course, it's usually a requirement within an organisation's chosen code of governance too.
Thanks, Sarah. So can you just expand and tell us why organisations seek third-party support in conducting board appraisals?
We see organisations engaging us as an independent third party to help design and support the administration of the process as a whole, which can be quite resource intensive, particularly for larger boards and where the appraisal process includes independent committee members.
And how often are appraisal reviews usually conducted?
In terms of frequency, we see many organisations undertaking annual reviews and then periodically, depending upon their chosen code of governance, undertaking an externally supported process at least every 3 years.
So let's take a look at the process. What does an externally supported board appraisal process actually involve?
So it varies depending upon the needs of the client and the scope of work they've identified that they require some support with. At DTP, we prefer to tailor our approach to the needs of the organisation, really making sure that the approach is comprehensive but crucially adds value too.
So go on, just talk me through the various elements of the process.
So it usually begins with some form of desktop exercise where questionnaires are issued to gather feedback from board members and the executive too. This can be in the form of self or collective assessment, as well as usually some form of 360-degree feedback, where feedback's gathered from a variety of different parties. There's then the individual appraisal meetings themselves that are held, where the feedback gathered is used to have a general conversation about an individual's performance over the previous 12 months. So things around what's worked well, any areas for improvement, and thinking about specific objectives for the next 12 months and any training and development needs that might need to be addressed. And finally, following on from the appraisal meetings themselves, the individual and overall outcomes are then summarised, which feed into the production of a board training and development plan.
So what role does DTP play?
So the role will vary depending upon the needs of the organisation, but generally it will include a review of the existing appraisal documentation. So for example, the questionnaires to be used, the templates, the process, how the report's going to be presented to board, and we're able to make suggestions for any changes that might be beneficial to make as part of this process. We then usually get involved in issuing questionnaires to board members and collating the responses. And we also prepare the summary feedback prior to the appraisal meeting itself for the board members. At the appraisal meeting, we provide input where required, with supporting the chair, and we also take detailed notes of the appraisal meeting itself. And finally, we will draft a report with the findings and recommendations which can be presented to the board.
So what is the benefit for providers and boards in having some form of external support?
So having external support brings a degree of independent challenge to the process, ensuring that providers are following best practice and following in their chosen code of governance. And sometimes there are difficult conversations to be had during appraisal meetings, and having external support can help in terms of providing an independent and objective viewpoint. We also know that board members find it helpful to have an independent person gathering their views and feeding these back to the organisation. And of course, undertaking appraisals themselves is a really resource intensive process, and it's therefore essential that they're meaningful.
So how much experience do DTP have in supporting organisations through the board appraisal process?
So as a team, we've been undertaking board appraisals and working in governance generally for over 30 years. Our approach continually develops as the requirements around governance do too.
Okay, so come on, let's finish with me putting you on the spot. Why DTP?
So, well, firstly, we tailor our approach to the client. We really don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. I think secondly, we're able to share best practice gathered from many years of working right the way across the social housing sector and beyond. And thirdly, we're a values-based organisation. We always provide an honest opinion and work with our clients in a collaborative way.
Great answer. I think that brings this podcast to an end. So if anyone wants to know more, you can contact Sarah at s.jackson@dtp.uk.com. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Stuart.
Well, I'm sure we'll be catching up again on this. All DTP's podcasts can be found on our social media channels. Thanks for listening.